Les tendances observées par Leboncoin. Nous avons l'honneur d'accueillir Loïs de Jorna, cofondateur Pilgo et directeur commercial Next Leboncoin.
Bonjour à tous.
Good morning. Thank you very much for hosting this conference here in this extraordinary hotel. I'm no economist, but I do have some figures to share with you to describe the situation at Leboncoin. Just a word about Leboncoin. 7 years ago, we had never heard of COVID, obviously, and one of our major concerns in the hotel industry was distribution and the encroachment of major U.S. hotel chains that were weighing more and more heavily in the balance and eating into our earnings. So with a few business partners, we tried to tackle that quasi-monopoly, convinced as we were that there was a better way to distribute hotel accommodation by occupying middle ground. So we moved into this market, having observed that the monopoly of distribution did not make it possible to derive lower prices, lower rates, and that's one observation. Another observation is that your profitability did not increase either, because apart from the distributor, nobody was making any money. So we looked closely at the situation, tried to understand why this deadlock was not resolving itself, and we realized that the main problem was Google and the cost of acquisition of a client on Google, which was becoming prohibitive, and only the mammoth players could overcome that difficulty. We looked closely at the matter of the audience. Last year, we were bought out by Leboncoin. And so now I'm going to report on the situation at Leboncoin. Now, you may not know us. We are all rounders. Many people turn to us to buy a car. Many people turn to us to buy housing. So real estate and cars are two main markets for us, and so we have our finger on the pulse, basically, of those two markets, and have for the last 15 years. 15 years now, Leboncoin has also been channeling hospitality supply and demand. 10 years ago, private individuals used to offer their housing for, summer accommodations on Leboncoin's website. We ended up buying Locasan, which is an online summer rental agency, and we moved on from that brick to adding the hospitality brick, or the hotel brick. So now you can find all sorts of lodgings on Leboncoin. Now look at those figures. They're staggering. Do bear in mind that Leboncoin is a French company. We're incorporated under French tax law, and we pay steep taxes. So we're very careful to avoid becoming overly dependent on Google. We have excellent traffic. Look at that figure, nearly 30 million single visits per month. This is, in bulk, a native audience. Only a fraction of those visitors come through Google. So the cost of acquisition is something that we have been able to avoid paying. Most of the people who consult Leboncoin regularly are direct clients of ours. Now, I'm not here just to tell you the exciting story of our industry, because in the interim, COVID hit hard, and I'm going to talk about the aftermath of that. I have 5 minutes to tell you all about this. What we can report from where we sit is that we have a pretty good idea. We saw at Christmas, when there was concern about the shutting down of ski lifts people started to look for snowshoes. And clearly there was an appetite for winter mountain holidays. So that's just one example. So we have a pretty fine understanding of the market, and we have some ability to forecast what might be in the offing. Now, Leboncoin Vacances, Leboncoin Vacation, which is 100% leisure offering, is pitched to French would-be vacationers. And we have French people who are planning a weekend getaway or a longer holiday, a longer vacation. Now, what happened this past summer? Unsurprisingly, there were some issues about reinsurance, and the health labels were an absolute must-have if you wanted to attract clientele back into your premises. That was one thing. And then another thing was that there was a lot of flexibility when it came to rates. Another unsurprising development. People wanted to be able to cancel at the last minute and pay no penalty for that. So you regroup to make that possible. And then the third observation is that French people rediscovered the appeal of vacationing in France, and that's a real growth driver for the future. There may just be a longer-term trend of this type, where French people will be spending more time vacationing in France in the future. And then the other trend, number 4, is that there is a later and later decision-making process. People are operating on a last-minute basis. There's very little advance notice. There has been a significant rise in hotel bookings. That's been a first sign of recovery. People were looking for accommodations where they would cross paths with as few people as possible. So that was a very specific demand there. In August of this year, though, growth resumed all the way through the end of August, and the decrease in the leisure sector is lesser than it was at the same time last year. So getaways are boosting hotel occupancy rates. Now, French people are operating on different premises. Some people want to go off as a family. Some people want to rent a holiday accommodation, and others do still want to stay at the hotel. So we can observe all of those trends. In recent times, we've done well. I think Vangelis's optimism is justified. From where we sit, the message is rather positive. The outlook looks good. Paris in particular and major French cities experienced growth, quite brisk actually. These are MKG figures that show that indeed there was a pickup. Of course, the growth curve looked great because last year's figures were so abysmal, but still, there is a resumption of business. And you can see this trend at work on Leboncoin. Reservations have spiked, particularly this past summer, and our single visitors under the heading hotels allowed us to plot a similar rise. But now the average spend, and let's talk about that for a moment. We were expecting that having saved their pennies for several months, the French people would spend more, but in fact they didn't splurge. They did not splurge. They're still relatively cautious, prudent. We saw less of a boom in spending than what we had expected. But reservations being made later and later, this last-minute trend is also a feature of the business of recent months. And this past summer, the seaside did very well, although major city business was pretty good too. Yet you can see that those seaboards did very well. Now, this coming winter looks good. Generally, though, people start to make reservations in late August for their winter holidays. This year, they're getting a later start. But they have started to make a few reservations. People still don't know whether or not the ski lifts will be in operation next winter. But look at the figures on the screen. The people who had been accustomed to taking a skiing vacation are still planning to do so. But, it's late in the year to start making your reservations. And the only way to stimulate bookings would be to offer very attractive rates. Now, my message, the takeaway message, is that I'm optimistic about the future of our market. The subject today is getting people back into your accommodations. That's where the bulk of your effort must be applied. And this way, tomorrow, when occupancy does increase, we won't end up, as we have in the wake of other crises like 9/11, with ineffective responses. We're not charging hotels commissions, have stopped doing that since the beginning of the epidemic at Leboncoin. We're still a small player. We stand in solidarity with you. The important thing is to make sure that there's a deep offering on Leboncoin, and that will help us increase our margins and also offer attractive rates to the client. So remember, you have client data. That is an invaluable asset. And we want to make every effort to make sure that your margins are good.